let's talk a little bit more about what industry you think could be the next big thing.
I believe we referred to it as powering up the electric vehicle industry, Justin. At least someone who's a lot more clever than I did came up with that slogan for it.
Right.
But this is one of those that's getting a lot of attention in the market, right? We talk about EVs a lot of time. We talk about Tesla a lot of time. Feels like the rest of this industry is catching up with Elon.
So what's going on with the EV? What are kind of some of the areas that are growing really fast right now?
Well, I have 73 technical diagrams that I'm going to share now with everybody, Arusha. So as long as you guys are okay for the next 2.5 hours, I'll just start up my PowerPoint, no problem. People are either going to love or hate this podcast, I tell you. Just kidding, of course. The bottom line is, though, that this is there's some fundamental science that's different. We're not just talking about incremental improvements to gas-powered cars anymore. Electric vehicles that are powered by batteries are completely different than them. They require completely different supply chains. And this thing that we've become comfortable with knowing as the car that we've optimized for the past century is suddenly changing. The people that are fans of electric vehicles are, first of all, fans of batteries. They are greener. There was kind of a lot of attention up front about the decarbonization, all the green efforts, the ESG, things like this that weren't associated with fossil fuels. But there are also others that are really a fan of just electric vehicles being more efficient too. The efficiency of the internal combustion engine and how that delivers power to the rest of the car is inferior to electric vehicles. And so I think those are kind of the two topics that maybe we can chat about as investors, because there's companies that are kind of going all in, pure plays on both the battery side of this and then also the how is the power delivered to the car, which to me are pretty interesting and pretty innovative.
Now, we should mention to folks, Simon is not just a pretty face. You actually did get a degree in chemical engineering, so you kind of know a little bit about the engineering side and some of the chemicals that are causing these reactions to produce this energy and everything. So thereby your 72 diagrams that you'll be showing us very shortly, I'm sure. So maybe kind of break it down for us a little bit. Of course, everyone is talking about lithium. It's you see that everywhere. And is that the be all end all, or are there competing things out there? And even with lithium, you've got kind of different factors of lithium. You've got the lithium carbide, or what do you see as being kind of the winner right now? And are there some contenders waiting in the wings?
It's interesting, Justin, because we go back just a couple of years. It was not that long ago that Elon Musk couldn't get anyone to show up for his booth. When Tesla was a new company and he was saying, hey, we're going to have this Tesla Roadster, this $100,000 electric vehicle that's going to be awesome. A lot of people were saying, that's really not going to work. In fact, Elon himself was saying that Tesla had a less than 10% chance of being successful. And now it's, more than $1 trillion company, one of the most popular companies and investment opportunities out there. But what Elon really did was he scaled up lithium ion chemistry. He found a battery that was good enough for electric vehicles to go mainstream. When we say mainstream, the mass market demands certain things. If you want to have it something that's going to replace the car that you already have in your garage, right? It's got to make sure that it's not going to run out of juice, right? When I'm driving to work, I can't be stranded on the side of the highway because I ran out of charge in my battery. And then if I do want to charge it up, I don't want to spend 2 hours sitting at a charging station. I want this thing to be charged up in 15 minutes, preferably even less than that, probably. And then also, battery packs are expensive. Electric vehicles are expensive. I don't want to have to replace this thing after 50,000 miles. I want it to last for 300,000 or 400,000 miles. And so Elon did a lot of good things with lithium ion as the technology that's powering all of Tesla's battery packs right now. But the people that are really, into the science and into the technology have said, hey, lithium ion goes back to the Arab-Israeli war. I mean, this is a technology that's been around for 50 years, excuse me, and we're incrementally improving it a little bit more every year, right? Tesla's getting a little bit better. Panasonic's getting a little bit better. But guys, if we really, really wanted to flip the script on this, there's an even better technology called lithium metal, which is highly unstable. By the way, it tends to blow up. Bad things tend to happen. But if we could fix a lot,
that's not encouraging. I'm thinking of the Ford Pinto now.
Bad publicity when your car blows up. but there are now companies that are actually saying, I think that we figured out a lot of these limitations and problems with lithium metal. It's got a higher energy density. It's got a faster charge time. It's got longer durability for more and more cycles. And as these things that were R&D considerations 10 years ago start getting into commercialized aspirations today, the companies can bring out to the market and actually start selling cars that might not have the same battery pack as Elon is making in the gigafactories. We should pay attention to things like this. At the end of the day, innovation tends to win. We're not driving Model Ts anymore. There's not steam-powered vehicles driving around on the roads. But it's an interesting one that's going to take some time. But I think it's fascinating and very interesting as an investor.
How long do people think that it will become much more commercial? I mean, like, how has it been where has it been introduced right now? And then, what's kind of the timeline for this to potentially become a viable alternative to lithium ion?
One of the companies we'll be chatting about in the third segment here has got partnerships with about 5 of the 10 largest OEMs in terms of sales within the United States. What that means, Arusha, is that nobody wants to get caught behind their competitors in this. If there's a better battery where you can buy a Ford car and it's going to get you 600 miles before you have to recharge it, but your best electric vehicle can only go 300 or 400 miles, what are people going to vote on? They're going to put their money where their mouth is and go with the performance. And so when these things tend to happen, they tend to be science experiments at first. Then they hit a critical mass, and then you see this S curve, just like we saw with Tesla's S curve, that they take off in very short periods of time. That can be 10 bagger and maybe 20 bagger potential for investors that catch them at the early stages.
Now, how much of this innovation, I mean, look, capitalism, it's all about creative destruction, right? But it makes me think of back in the day when you had the VHS and the Betamax, right? And then, you eventually had the laser disc was in there at some point, DVDs, Blu-ray, all of this. Sometimes there were growing pains, right? It was like, who's going to be the winner? First of all, where do we need to put our money? Because at first you don't know. There's competing technologies and you don't know who the winner is going to be. Betamax, a lot of people argued, was the better technology, but it didn't win. So with this different battery technologies, number one, how do you kind of adjust to, maybe this one is the more commercially viable? And then number two, does that create like changes in supply chains, production, all of those things to make that shift to say, okay, now we're going this way because this is the better technology? Or do you stick with the old technology because that's what you kind of put your money into, the CapEx expenditures?
You close your eyes and throw darts, Justin, right? You just kind of blindly say, okay, we're going to go with this one today. It starts with scientists, right? It starts in the lab. Somebody comes up with something that's interesting. They put it out there for venture capitalists to take a look at. All of a sudden, you've got some big name, Kleiner Perkins types of Sequoia venture capitalists that are putting some big money into things through later and later rounds. These companies go public. There's, mass market brand recognition of companies like this. And then you've got commercial milestones that happen one step at a time. It's not just jumping in the deep end of the pool and doing a high dive, cannonball, and then all of a sudden things happen. It's the result of decades of work. And we are starting to see, we were first talking about batteries, but, lithium metal and even lithium ion too, have been lab experiments for long periods of time. We should not understate how much Elon Musk had to do with this, because he didn't want to disrupt his own business. If you're Ford and you've been optimizing your cars based on the internal combustion engine for a century, you're not really eager to go out there and give up all your margin to try something new. But if you get pushed by a disruptor that's getting a lot of attention, just like Tesla has, all of them every OEM now is wanting to make sure they're not getting left behind. There's businesses and employees at stake on this.
So including Tesla, they're definitely have some people working on lithium metal just in case, that becomes the technology.
Yeah, and disruptive innovation always says, Arush, it's tough to beat the incumbent at their own game.
Right.
It's hard to come out there and have a lower priced, better performing microprocessor that's a CPU that's going to compete against Intel. It's hard to have a more efficient gas-powered engine that's being put into the cars is going to get better highway gas mileage. But if we're starting over, if we're using batteries and we're using drivetrains that are completely different than what we've got right now, if we're looking at traction inverters that are distributing that power to the rest of the vehicle more efficiently, all of a sudden it flips the script on a lot of the things that we've kind of held sacred for a long time.
Mhm. So, maybe let's get into that a little bit more because you did talk about, okay, uh, getting back to your original energy, and there's a lot of ways we can define energy. Are you getting it from fossil fuels? Are you getting it from electric? Are you getting it from lithium, chemicals, what have you? Um, but there's that traction inverter. Can you talk a little bit about that efficiency with which the power ends up turning the wheels
Yeah,
for you?
that's exactly, as efficiency is the right word for this, right? We're looking for decades about putting liquid gasoline into our cars, input, and then the output of that is spinning the wheels, right? I step on the accelerator on the highway, and all of a sudden I'm up to 60 miles an hour. How many seconds can you get me there, right? Uh, Gas-powered cars are not really that efficient. We've kind of talked about the range of 40 to 50% efficiency in terms of the energy going in and inputs versus the output of turning the wheels of our car. But Elon and others said, electric vehicles, if we're doing this where we're actually producing DC power out of a battery pack, turning it into alternating electric current that's used by the motor of an electric vehicle, AC power, not AC DC the band, but DC to AC, for these cars, we can get up to maybe 80 to 90% efficiency, double where we were at before. And we also said, if there was a different material that we would use in the chips that's helping to distribute that power across the vehicle in a more efficient way, we could probably get up to 95 or even 97% efficiency.
Wow.
But it's going to take a different type of chemistry. It's going to take a different material that's going into the chips. That material is silicon carbide, which is being used in Tesla's traction inverters that are giving its vehicles 97% efficiency today. And so Tesla's been the early leader in this field. It's, again, a picks and shovel play, but others are catching up, and there are other companies that are doing this even more efficiently than what Tesla's doing right now.
So for Simon, for the lame, just for the layman, how does having that much more efficiency affect their lives? It's just going to cost less to get the same amount of work done. I mean, translate that into like something that I can understand.
At the end of the day, if I'm making a battery-powered car, I want it to be as light as possible, Harish. Okay. I want the smallest battery pack I can put on there, because more weight means you got to slow down when you're driving 150 miles through an hour through California, right?
Yeah.
Just kidding. No one ever did that in LA, I don't think. 10 miles an hour on the highways? But at the end of the day, it turns into specifications, right? Lighter weight, better energy density, more efficient power distribution across the car. I mean, things that are, just specs for R&D guys translate into dollars and cents of something that could be a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of, these different types of companies. There's companies that are providing the batteries that have higher energy density. There are companies that provide the power modules or the traction inverters that are components that go into a Tesla or another electric vehicle out there. I mean, when you're starting from scratch, again, it's okay to be new, because you're doing something fundamentally different than what everybody else is doing out there.
Well, now maybe we can just kind of wrap up this discussion with one other component, and I'd just love to hear your thoughts on this, Simon. One of the things that's, I guess, difficult about replacing the internal combustion engine is that there's this whole infrastructure with gas stations, right? And they're all over the place. They're readily available. Now you have to replace that with charging stations, and how readily available are those? How frequently can you run across them? I mean, I know driving up the 5, sometimes I'm like, okay, it's 30 miles until the next one, and if that one's closed, then when is the next one? That's 30 miles. With some of these charging stations, it could be a lot longer that you have to go, and you have to really kind of back into, where am I going to stop? How long am I going to have to stop for to charge? And how efficient is that going to be? And will is the charging station going to be there? Is it going to be available? And is it going to be working? So
you're giving me range anxiety here.
Yeah, right, exactly. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that side. Is there, is there anything that you're calculating on that side and looking towards?
There's two sides to it, Justin, right? There's one side that's the political side of it, and then there's one part of it that's the commercial side of it. The political part, I really can't comment on. I don't know. I don't know where the money is going to go to. We talk about, infrastructure for supercharging stations. We talk about R&D grants, proposed by the presidential administrations, things like this. There's hundreds of billions of dollars that's committed now to R&D science, fundamental research that can go into things like this. And a lot of that subsidizes businesses to do really neat things when they can get, some money from the government to reduce their own capital costs. But the perspective I've always taken as someone who worked at a tech ventures division of one of the large 10 largest companies in the United States was we always looked at without subsidies. If you didn't look at the political side of this at all, and you just looked at the technology and let that make your decisions go forward, which ones do you really want to bet on? And 9 out of 10 don't go anywhere, right? You'll go out and you'll even put money into things that are not going to be the end winner. But you have to take bets, and then you have to kind of consolidate across those bets. It's very hard to go from 0 to 60 in terms of commercializing things without kind of taking incremental steps along the way. And I think that's where we stand with a lot of these, that they are, again, progressing out of the lab, getting some scalability prototypes that are now getting into programs with really big customers out there. The next step's going to be, are we looking at companies that maybe are $1 billion today, maybe $5 billion today, that are worth $50, $100 billion in the future, because that's what the auto industry can support. There's a lot of cars that get sold every single year across this country.
And I mean, we should also mention, and this is one of the things we've been kind of talking about, especially here in California, we've had this major heat wave, and it was like, hey, don't charge your cars. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You're telling us that we have to switch to electric, but then you don't want us to charge them. There's you're a chemical engineer. Help me. How does that work? Explain the physics to me.
Turn the AC off, right?
Right.
It's a trade-off, right? I mean, you've got California saying, yeah, no more gas-powered cars, but then you've got brownouts throughout the state. It's the political side of it. It's always challenging. It's two cars driving alongside each other on the same highway, which helps certain technologies catch on.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.